Welcome back to stream. I have just experienced a game crash. I thought it was fixed. Looks like it's not, but it is. Oh my word. It's a full wet start at the Albert Park Street circuit. And that is looking, oh my, that is tense. That is incredible. Maybe that's the reason for the drivers not being able to get these laps too right. But wow, the weather has thrown a massive spanner in the works, hasn't it? As the start of the race is very, very shortly coming. Just 1 second to go now as the drivers have readied up. And yeah, they've got ready here. It's full wet conditions for the race start as the JR Racing team have locked out the front row. It looks to be lights out, and away we go. Sasha gets away pretty well. Daddlepad's got a brilliant start. I think it's Slinky who's got a pretty terrible start up here. Daddlepad up to P3. Schumacher jumps to second. Oh, big contact there at the back. Grosjean is lucky to avoid spinning, but a lot of drivers are off the road. Oh, and he does spin in the end. Grosjean loses part of his wing. So does Mendes. I think Robin got caught up in that as well. Sasha leads the race so far. Schumacher's in second. Daddlepad in P3. Max Power is in for Slinky, losing a lot of ground off the line, going from second down to fifth. But now I'm quickly going to have to enable everything just to have this all sorted out. Position change we'll have for now. Everybody's on the full wets anyway, as JR Sasha keeps the lead, but Schumacher is now following in second. Maybe not what Juventus Racing wanted here, but this is going to be a true test of the drivers. How well can they push in these conditions? Daddlepad in P3 for the GSP team. Max Power is fourth, making up 2 places for VRT. Slinky in P5, down 3 places. Elliott is right on his back already for One Esports, losing just 1 position. But yeah, he's looking very, very quick as the Ferrari man, as he is maybe now looking for a move into turn 10. Will he go for it to the inside? No, he cannot. Slinky looks to have got it pretty much under control. Oh, but what even is under control in these conditions? Pokerol looking at the back here, making up 1 position himself. Chupi is around there at the back. There's a lot of battling still going on up and down the field. Robin, 14th, losing so many places, but the biggest loser so far is Ace Grosjean, who's of course lost part of his wing as well. But Sasha is the man in the lead for the moment. Elliott is now looking for a move for P5 to move One Esports into the top 5, and he does so into turn 1. He looks like he makes it work. Oh, that's Pokerol going wide. Elliott going wide himself as well, but he is through P5 for the as One Esports driver, displacing Slinky even more. And from second to sixth, he cannot be happy with the race start so far, can the Dutchman. What a shame, really. Show tires, I think everybody is on the full wet, if I'm not mistaken. Let's have a look. There we go. There is nobody on Inters so far. I believe Grosjean might be one to have a look at them now, as he is having to pit after that first lap collision and possible wing damage. Daddlepad is one who might be one to look out for, as he is very much at the back of Schumacher 1 for WR Esports. Malone, in fact, you are right. I am only the commentator for this event, but indeed, nobody on the full wet. Nobody on the Inters. Everyone on the wet. So this is going to be a prolonged period, I would say, of the wet compound tires. I'm quickly just looking to sort out the chat as well. There we go. Got that one sorted. Yeah, this is such sketchy conditions here at this Albert Park Street circuit. Not what anybody would have wanted. Last season, we of course had a wet qualifying and a dry race. Now it's exactly the other way around. It's a dry qualifying session, but then a at least partly rain-affected race. One Elliott feeling the benefits here, as Schumacher now sets the pace on this second lap behind Sasha up top. And I'm sure Sasha's threats will not be over whatsoever. Daddlepad is trying to put some pressure on the German there. So we've got a spin. Mendes, yeah, Mendes looks like he's made a mistake in the final sector. But now this is so tight. I think this is not going to change. The DRS obviously won't be in play for a while with these full wet conditions. But even still, I think the tactical aspect of the racing will be very, very much pronounced in these top super difficult conditions. Sasha, I think, might have just felt some effect of track limits, which is one big one to look out for, really. Track limits, a massive factor around the Albert Park Street circuit here in Melbourne. As still some moves going on there. Rodas looks has made a mistake there as well for GTZ. It's all going wrong so far, but it's just the start of the race. The walls are so close as well, so you can never rule out a safety car. Of course, since 1996, the first time that this race has been held, there have been so many safety car affected races. That is Krishy going very wide there through turn 10. Meaning Casanova can slip through and into P11. Of course, P1 to P10 are the points-paying positions in this race. So far, still no points gained for VRA, but still one step closer, at least position-wise, as both Benelari drivers, in fact, have made up these positions. Quickly checking here, Benelari Dennis 6 places up from his starting spot. Oh, big slide there on the exit. This is going to be really tough for all these drivers to manage. Sasha still leads. Schumacher in second. Dadopad now set the fastest lap. Sasha! Oh my word, he's lost it massively here. Now he's going to have to defend from Schumacher, but elects not to do so. Schumacher to the inside. Gets through. WR Esports are in the lead now. Dadopad right on the back of the Swiss driver. And that is a big mistake. He's lucky to not be out of the race here. So big props for him to saving that. But of course, that now means Schumacher from third up to P1 in 4 laps of racing. Sasha dropping from pole position now down to P2. I think Dadopad will have a word in that as well, but oh, it's so sketchy. These drivers are having to risk absolutely everything to get whatever they can. Yeah, it's looking like the top 3 are the main factors in this race. Sasha is actually still on the attack on Schumacher. Schumacher goes wide. Sasha is super close, touches the back even. Maybe this invites Dadopad, as that will lose him some momentum, but he's just a bit too far back. Maybe just looking what he can do, and even perhaps capitalize on something happening. You never know. One Elliott also close to the back of Max Power with a strong start. He manages to get P4. Elliott getting back to P5 after this turn 1 turmoil that we had on the opening lap. But is now back in his starting position of P5 and is definitely looking to improve on this. And I mean, the weather forecast, I'm not too sure what that's looking like, but if the rain is staying like this, then I don't see how we're moving away from the 4 wet tires anytime soon. A quick drinking break, of course, is always necessary, particularly in these sketchy conditions. Yeah, I think the drivers, they'll be feeling the big need of one of those. As yeah, there's just more mistakes being made. I think Chupi is one of the next drivers that to fall victim of an error and drops to 14th. Krishy, though, as well, is not having a great race so far. Schumacher has pulled the gap to almost a second now to Sasha behind him. In fact, it's now extended a second. Schumacher is pushing. He's trying to get away here. Of course, no DRS in the wet conditions, but of course it's still even better for him to get a good gap and just assure himself of this leading position. I think there's more downforce on that car, perhaps, for Sasha, as you're always getting back ever so slightly in the corners. But then Schumacher can make it up on the straight again. As Max Power, in fact, has got almost into that DRS range, the fictional DRS range, of course, at the moment. But he's almost within that second again of Dadopad, getting back into the top 3, and now making this actually a pretty big train, all the way down to P7 to his teammate Pokeral, who is still hanging on to the back of Slinky. Slinky, I think he'll be very unhappy with himself after such a weak race start. Schumacher setting the fastest lap again, but I mean, with so much ERS usage, is it really a surprise? Commanding at the moment, profiting from that big mistake that Sasha didn't make, exiting turn 2 here. Dadopad, wow, really wide, pushing hard, but I think that one has actually cost him a little bit to Sasha ahead. So he's going to have to just dial it down a little bit, perhaps, as GTZ Mendes, I think, has had a mistake. And yeah, these conditions, super treacherous. Going to catch out the good and even, well, the good and the great drivers, perhaps, as we've already seen in the session so far. Schumacher currently controlling it. But yeah, you can never say anything for certain in such treacherous conditions. Elliott is also close to the back of a Red Bull here of Max Power, P4 for the moment, 4 and 5. These 2 places being very contested. So we can, I think, now switch it back to the tyre. We've got a DNF there at the back. That is one Robin out of the race and causing a safety car. That must have been losing it on the traction. Let's have a look. Go on board with Rodas. very shortly anyways, due to the fact that he is not very close yet. But what will this mean on the strategy front? Will there be anybody gambling on intermediate tyres, or will the conditions still be as terrible as they are at the moment? So the Ferrari is actually already off the track, okay? So we won't obviously find out the causes there. Schumacher, will he head in? No, he will not. Sasha stays out. Darupal stays out. That to me is an indication that this weather is staying the way it is, at least for a considerable portion of this race. Mustache, will he be heading in? We'll just have a look at all the drivers, how they are deciding. As Brent stays out, and Casanova might just be a candidate. Everyone from probably 11th down might be having a small think about what to do in these situations, but I think the consensus is to stay out on the wet tires. And I mean, the rain is looking horrible, honestly. It is a massive downpour here in Australia. I think they even the lads in the country haven't seen such a downpour since I don't know when. Maybe 2013, when there was last a heavily rain-affected session. In qualifying it was. The drivers actually had to qualify to Q3, I believe, on the Sunday morning. The race then later being won by Kimi Räikkönen in the Lotus. As you can serve your memory there. We've got Roadhouse heading into the pit lane for GTZ. What tyres will it be for the Alfa Romeo driver? It looks to me another set of wets. Yeah, he's just going for the fresh wet tyres. I would say so is Grosjean, so is Mendes eventually, if he does pit. But he's right at the back. He might as well, unless he runs danger of getting lapped. But I don't think that's a wing change actually for Grosjean there. As Mendes, in fact, is heading into the pit lane as well. New set of wets as well for Grosjean. Yeah, the consensus seems to be clear. Full wet tyres still for the time being. And looking at the track, this is probably not changing anytime soon. Right, a little downtime. Quickly, I haven't you sorted something out there in Discord chat. Now back for the action again, but at the moment, I would say we're still getting another 1, maybe 2 safety car laps. I'm at this Albert Park Street circuit. I think that gives me a good opportunity to again talk about the organization of CTC, Competitive Team Championship. Of course, last season we had 5 stages with 3 races each, 15 races then in total. And every stage being announced individually, basically. That left a little bit of tension. You couldn't just head out and prepare immediately for every track that was on the calendar, due to the fact that you simply wouldn't know it. And only the staff themselves would obviously know where we are heading next. And I think it's a great format, to be honest. 3 races always tightly packed together, 3 weeks in a row. Then we have, of course, 1 week's break. And in that time, the 2nd and 3rd and 4th stage eventually will be announced to all the drivers and to all the Twitter followers as well, of course. If you do enjoy the content that you are seeing, do head over to the Twitter account as well, twitter.com/CT Championship. A lot of good content there, seen from both Tiers 1 and Tier 2. As obviously we have expanded this whole range to 2 tiers now. And I mean, it is great to see, particularly towards the end of this game cycle. We know how riddled this game is, unfortunately, with bugs and glitches and everything like that. But still, the teams are looking for some motivation to compete in these high-level championships. And it's great to see from all these drivers as well. Everyone making the best possible effort to field as many drivers as possible for every single race week in, week out. And yeah, Thursday evening, CTC evening, they are back. And Boy, am I excited. This is amazing to see yet again. And now lap 9. I think the safety car might be heading in this lap, depending on the progress of Mendes there, right at the back for GTZ. 14 and 16 only for them, unfortunately. So not the best race so far, but this safety car gives them the opportunity to catch back up. Of course, same goes for Grosjean for the Ace team, who has a very unfortunate first lap of the race. His teammate Mustache, there in P8 at least, has had a solid first few laps. We can check the position changes one more time here, as this gives us a quiet opportunity to do so. Schumacher making up 2 places, starting 3rd now in P1. Sasha losing his P1, his pole position slot due to a big error out of turn 2, is now trailing behind the AlphaTauri. Dadopad making up 1 spot from 4th to now find himself in the podium place. Max Power making up 2 spots for the VRT team to find himself 4th after starting 6th. Juan Elliott, the only driver in fact to hold position of his race start in P5. Slinky going all the way from the front row down to P6. He will not be happy with that, but the safety car restart might be approaching pretty soon. It is indeed. Safety car is coming in this lap. Bernd Mailander will now be heading into the pit lane with his lovely Aston Martin safety car, and leaves Schumacher there to control the pace throughout the entire final sector. Tire temperatures won't be too much of a factor, I would imagine anyways, due to these wet conditions, and neither does ERS actually, due to the fact that of course it is wet and the recharge will be a little bit higher. Now he's actually gone fairly early. Obviously he can't accelerate just yet, but he can't do this in such massive intervals. Go again, stop, go again, that is obviously not allowed, and he will be aware of this, and hopefully the other drivers will be as well. Schumacher taking this slow. The safety car is now in the pit lane. Now would be the time for him to be able to restart this race, but when will he decide to go? I think he might leave this super late to make the traction particularly difficult for all the drivers behind. Schumacher in this AlphaTauri now, I believe he's heading off. Yes, he is. Schumacher, solid restart from him, and Sasha is not exactly pressuring him at all. He's not getting too much pressure from behind either, but there's a lot of things that are going on behind as well. Grosjean straight into the pit lane. Oh, Sasha goes very wide onto the grass. He's now going to have to be careful to not spin out. Dadopad will now take this opportunity to take P2, but there's also Max Power on the outside there. Sasha smartly backs out of it. Dadopad goes very deep into turn 3, and he can't make this move stick. And Max Power, out of all this, is now finding himself in P2. Brilliant stuff from him to profit there. Schumacher now pulling 1.3 seconds, but Max Power in P2. Great stuff from the Austrian driver. Takes 2 places in 1 corner. Thank you very much, he says indeed. Dadopad still in P3. Sasha, the big loser again. This time 2 places lost on this safety car restart in P4. Juan Elliott holding position. Pokra on P6 still as well. Slinky, in fact, dropping another spot, now P7 after starting 2nd. So it's not going all too well for Juventus Racing so far. The rest of the order seems relatively unchanged. Grosjean, I believe, has headed into the pit lane of this restart lap, which is a shame for him to see. Benelori Brent super close to the back of Ace Mustache. Would there be anything that the Williams man can do perhaps? Rodas now picking up a 3-second penalty. Brent to the inside. Does he get it slowed down now for turn 11? He does, but Mustache holds it around the outside. A lot of curve was involved there as well for Brent, and the positions stay as you were. P8 for Mustache, P9 for Brent, but Schumacher, very strong safety car restart, profits from the mistakes behind to already have a good gap to Max Power behind him. Is it a fastest lap as well on this restart lap? No, it isn't, but I mean, it's still enough time for these drivers to prove it. I think now we can put this back to the tires as well. Of course, the fresher tires will be coming in at some point, but the overtaking, of course, so difficult now on this wet track, as Casanova looks like he's made a mistake there in turns 1 and 2. Rodas is through as well, so a lot of position changes going on. Christian and Rodas making up the spots. Mendes, in fact, trying to go through as well on the inside, and he does. Good move from Mendes there. GTZ in 12th and 13th now, displacing Casanova by a fair bit there. And Schumacher still up top. Max Power is trying to close this in, but he is a fast geezer, isn't he? Schumacher there up top. We know how quick he is, and Max Power is going to have to try everything in this power to stay even remotely close to that AlphaTauri car. now I think you see the controller actually coming in there from Krishy. Can't get this turn 9 and 10 chicane properly right. High speed, even in wet conditions, still very tough to get right. As the two Alfa Romeos will be looking at the back there, thinking, is there anything that we can perhaps do to get this position off Krishy, move ourselves one place closer to the point-paying positions? As Schumacher, again, through this final corner, looking actually a bit weak. Max Power has gained a fair bit of time. It sets the fastest lap as well, 1:32.6. And the game is very much on as Slinky is into the pit lane. Is that intermediate? Yes, it is. Intermediate tyres. So this is perhaps the time where the crossover is coming in. JL Slinky is the first man to blink and head onto intermediate tyres. Is the Dutchman. Maybe something to do with how his race has not really gone to plan at all. And now he's going to have to try and make this all up on the race strategy. But indeed, the rain does look like it's getting a little bit less, just a tiny bit. Not too much so far, but it is definitely getting a little less. As penalties actually haven't got too much into play either yet. So I think maybe there we might still see some changes. But I think Max Power is the man who might just have the little power on Schumacher, but Schumacher a little more ERS as well. So the usage is very much differing there. Grosjean is in for the intermediates as well, right at the back. And now, of course, it's very important to have this tyre detail up, because now we will be seeing the big changes flooding in eventually, or quite literally even, in some way. But who of the leaders will now be thinking, okay, now is a good time to react, head into the pit lane, and strap on a set of intermediates? The rain is getting less. So I think we might just be looking at it pretty soon. Schumacher is staying out. Max Power is staying out as well. Sasha is in. So Juventus Racing is a bit of a team game here as well. Elliott, I think, is in as well. Pokeral staying out and making it 2 and 4, actually, for the VRT team. Schumacher sets the pace again on another lap. Benelari Brent is into the pit lane. So is Casanova for VRA. And that is for the intermediate tyres. They are thinking the track is ready, or will be ready, fairly soon, so that they will now be gaining time on the leaders. And this is so interesting. And a full wet to intermediate showdown in the very first race of the season here at Albert Park. Oh, what have we come for? I think I, as the commentator, might actually be the only one who can hope for such scenarios. But I think the drivers, well, they have to drive in anything they'll be put up with. So yeah, it's down to them to perform. Schumacher going very wide there again through this particular part of the track. Max Power is looking for an opportunity pass. The track is definitely drying now. You can see that very clearly from the onboard. Max Power, purple middle sector. He uses so much battery there. They're now going to have to try and gain as much time as they can. But Schumacher has sensed it. So nothing happening there. Says Mendes actually through on GSP, Krishy, and into P7 for the moment. It depends now where the intermediate runners will be flooding out on the track. I think Pokeral, of course, now being the one with the big gap behind due to two drivers in front of him pitting. Now, will the drivers respond? Yes, Schumacher comes in. Max Power comes in. Daddlepad is in the pit lane. Will Pokeral come in as well? That will be a slight stack for the Red Bull guys. But who will stay out? Is there anybody, in fact, who will stay out? Mustache is in. Dennis is coming in, but Mendes is staying out. He's bravely staying out on his slightly fresher set of wet tyres. Everybody is now peeling in for Inters, and he will be the only driver yet to stop for their new set of wets. But now it's going to be interesting. Where is Slinky? And where's Sasha compared to all of this? Slinky set the fastest lap. He's right behind the guys. Slight desync there, looks like, from Elliott, or just lag in general. But Max Power has actually come out on top of Schumacher here in the pit lane. Schumacher is to the inside of turn 3. Oh, this is not going too well. Oh, he's been pushed on the curb. But Schumacher is through again for the moment. The conditions are still very sketchy. That is Elliott. Is that Elliott or is it Sasha? It's Sasha making contact there. Wing damage as well for the Alpine man. Juventus Racing having such a tough day in the office so far. Goes pretty wide. Sasha with now a part of his wing missing. That will be a huge hindrance, I think, to his race. As Elliott, I think, has been pulled into this as well. So not a good situation at all from some of the drivers here. Is it in fact even damaged? I'm pretty sure I've seen something on that end plate. Oh, but the lag for Elliott is looking pretty major. I really hope it's nothing coming in. Slinky actually has then jumped Elliott in that pit stop phase due to pitting slightly earlier, but I think Max Power, he's not going to be happy with the antics of Schumacher. Then again, Schumacher can argue the same way. He had the inside. It was his corner, but still fairly robust racing, if you will. Mendes is now heading into the pit lane. The final runner on the wets will be coming in. Pocoral and Sasha, they're switching positions in the midfield. No damage, at least visually actually, from Sasha. It did look like it a lot. And of course he was ghosted as well. Now the order is reset again. Schumacher in the lead. Max Power in second. Dadopad is in P3. And everybody now on the intermediates. That means we can switch the detail over again. Here we go. Position change. No, position change is not too important. We will leave it on the tyres actually. It's not really a difference. It's Sabellari Brent there through turns 1 and 2, through on Mendes. Will his teammate have a look into that too? Mendes to the outside actually of turn 3. That is a bold move. That's a great move. He pulls it off to the inside now of 4. Oh, there's a big slide going on. Will Dennis perhaps profit of this? Mendes is through, but I think there was some pretty significant contact going on between the two, as Critchley now picks up the first penalty there at the bottom. I think actually Rodas has won as well, so it's one of the first penalties still. Critchley in 14, that's not going to be happy with that. Yeah, of course, a big shame there to pick up a penalty and solo down as well. Yeah, let's now have a look. Schumacher, Max Power, Dadopad, the top 3 all German speaking. Have to add to that due to the fact that Max Power is, I believe, from Austria. Schumacher won the former esports challenger from Germany, as well as Dadopad in P3. Position change going on there. Dennis being let through perhaps there by Brent. So maybe have a better chance of challenging at the top. Sasha looks like he actually might have got away without damage here. Schumacher sets the fastest lap, 30.7. He's setting the pace, but I think in general this is all going to be very, very close. I'm just looking at the fastest lap gaps. And yeah, lots of the drivers so close together. Schumacher currently picking up the most points, but will it stay this way? Lap 16 out of 29. We're barely across the halfway stage of this race, and I think it's still got a lot to give, particularly in these sketchy conditions. Slinky, in fact, is actually really struggling for pace here, so the fact that he got this undercut in the first place is actually really beneficial, but now he's struggling a lot. So maybe his setup is just not suited to conditions whatsoever. One Elliott is looking at the back here thinking, can I maybe make something work in these conditions? Make his way through. If he is ahead at one point, he will stay ahead. I'm convinced of that. And Elliott, I think, is sensing his opportunity here. Maybe putting some pressure on Slinky to make a little mistake through turns 9 and 10. Will it happen? Not quite, I think, for Elliott's liking. So there's no move yet to happen into turn 11, sorry. And yeah, for now the Alpine holds its ground. But what has started as a 1-2 for Juventus Racing, 4 and 6 for the moment, is still a strong points haul so far. But it's definitely not what they would have been looking for. It's VRT even stealing the limelight a little bit. Of course, WRR too. But it's such a shame that Schumacher, the only driver, 29.6 now. He's really setting the pace, upping the ante here for Max Power. Can he even follow? And what will Dadopad think of this for GSP? Holding his own in P3. I think he'll be delighted if he brings this home. Even with the slight safety car restart turbo, I think one Elliott might just be the raciest driver here at the moment. Trying to make something work on Slinky. Slinky is struggling a lot with something. It's either his setup, his tires, his wings, whatever, but it's not really looking comfortable at all for Slinky out there, and he's having to do everything he possibly can to even hold this position. It doesn't even look like he's got a straight line speed advantage, so it might just be completely confidence related for the Dutch driver for Juventus Racing. Looking back now on the Frenchman behind him, one Elliott. No ERS is being used, so perhaps that straight line speed is coming in. But certainly, it is not going to be an easy feat at all. Now Elliott into turn 9 and turn 10. He's trying to get this better exit down, is the Ferrari driver, but he can't quite do it. Now he's using the overtake a little. He just wants to put the pressure on the Alpine. Can he make anything work? This is so tough to overtake here. It wouldn't be much to overtake in the first place, even in dry conditions. But even in the wet, it's just made even worse. Now Slinky slows through this final sector. Elliott is not sensing his chance just yet. He's trying to be sensible with this. and I think he knows what's on the line with his teammate already being out of the race. Daddlepad now actually sets the fastest lap in P3, and yeah, that gap has grown to 6 seconds between Daddlepad and Slinky. And that really shows the pace is not there at all for that, well, current leading Juventus Racing driver, as Sasha unfortunately has made too many mistakes so far. Elliott is closing in into turn 3, but there is nothing he can do. It's just so difficult to overtake around this circuit, and in wet conditions that effect is only just multiplied. And yeah, you could just clearly see how much he's struggling. Mustache now being overtaken into turn 3 by Mendes around the outside. That's a beautiful overtake from Mendes. P8 so far, it's points for the GTZ team. And I think they'd be delighted if they bring this home. The gaps have risen a lot. But even still, we've got our fights going on. Elliott is probably the raciest one so far. 4 and 5, very heavily contested at the moment. He's just waiting for that one error so that he can pounce. And that actually might have been a bit of a track limits infringement, perhaps, for one Elliott. But yeah, there's not much he can make work. Rodas just being overtaken there by Krishy as well at the back of the field. Yeah, these lads will be hoping for a safety car maybe at some point. Schumacher now trying to pull the gap again a little as we cast our minds back to the lead of this race. Schumacher pulling the gap slightly to Max Power, but nothing too significant just yet. I think Max Power is not out of this. If he keeps his nose clean, if he keeps close to it, he sets the fastest lap as well, 1:29.3. And he is definitely not out of the question here at all. Neither is Daddlepad. He goes quite wide. I think with how the track limits are, that might have been a warning too. But it's not something I can really have a look at as, yeah, there we go. We've got one already here. JR Sasha in this top field has picked up a 3-second penalty. He's currently, luckily for him, only losing one spot to Pokeral, but it's still a spot you would usually like to keep. So he's not going to be happy with himself. And even with the mistakes he's made overall in this race, yeah, it's not been the greatest showing, despite this commanding pole position even by well over a 10th over his teammate. But that teammate is now being put under pressure yet again. One Elliott, there is an angry Frenchman trying to get the position. I think he knows for himself that if he gets past, that he can make a lot of ground up to the top 3. They themselves are going pretty quick anyways, but I think Elliott has got a lot more pace in him. Look at the gaps between those top 3. Barely covered by 0.8 of a second. I think this is far from over for these 3. Schumacher is being put under a lot of pressure by Max Power in that Red Bull. The sister AlphaTauri in the lead, but it's not looking for certain at all as we head into the final 10 laps of this Australian Grand Prix. Daddlepad right behind as well. You do not know how this is panning out at the end. Elliott as well being a lot of pressure. Oh, is there a spin at the back? Krishy and Rodas looks like they have had some coming together. Or it's just Krishy having a spin. And unfortunately not on the level of his teammate Daddlepad in this race so far. Big shame to see that for the German. Wow, he's really putting the pedal to the metal, this Daddlepad. Very quick driver, and he's putting it to show here in these wet conditions. Elliott again using some overtake. I think Slinky's just about covering himself off with his use of the overtake button. And yeah, in fact, ERS levels are very similar. It's just what you come to expect in these wet conditions. But I'd imagine tire wear might be a bigger factor with the facts I'm assuming are costing Slinky pace. And that, in my opinion, must be setup related. As yeah, he's struggling a lot at the moment. Rodas is into the pit lane. Is that going to be any gamble on slicks? There is no way. Nah, it's new intermediate, of course, for the GTZ driver. No sign of slicks whatsoever. I think no sign of DRS even in this race at all. Schumacher has now upped the pace a little bit to 1.4 seconds. Maybe he's just trying to pull a gap to have some safety from that Red Bull driver behind him. But Daddlepad as well, trying to put some pressure on the Red Bull. Can't make anything work though. It's a bit of a theme that you can see throughout this race. I think the clearest is Elliott here. The clearest example here, we've got with one Elliott. He's so close to Slinky throughout this entire time. Look at how close he's coming. Schumacher now 28.0, almost dipping into 27s here with his fastest lap. Now some ERS being used from both sides. And I think one Elliott is going to be he's going to be furious. He's going to be getting desperate at some point, I'd imagine, to try and find a spot past JR Slinky in front of him. See into turn 3, I don't think there's much he can make work unless he wants to make a big dive. Oh, late on the brakes. Avoids the back of the Alpine. pretty comfortably in the end as well anyways. But it's still looking very much contested. Can Slinky hold on to this 4th place? It would be a big achievement on the oldest intermediate for one, and I think on probably the most wrong setup in this top flight. 7 seconds behind Daddlepad. The pace from the top guys has maybe dropped off slightly, but that doesn't hide the fact that Slinky is just not up to speed in these conditions. Now into 9 and 10 again. Elliott is getting very close, but just can't get that exit down, or can he? Maybe this time. Elliott is looking for a move on Slinky, but it's just not happening. I think the ERS is actually too powerful from Slinky's side, and perhaps his lower wings, which I'm imagining might be the reason for that straight line speed. But Elliott, oh, he must be getting so frustrated behind that Alpine car. He can probably draw it from memory at this point, that rear end. And I don't know if that is something to be particularly proud of when you're trying to overtake as hard as one Elliott is. And you never know, Sasha is behind that as well, so is Pokeral. So the pressure from them is not gone at all. We've got GZ Mendes taking the fastest lap of the race. So he's showing a very promising upturner pace. I think he's used a lot of ERS to do that. But even still, P8 and the fastest lap point at the moment. A strong showing so far from the man with that GTZ tag. Not something perhaps you would have expected to see in qualifying. But now in P8, looking to pick up some strong points. And that would be brilliant for them, of course, to see if they were to manage to hold on to this points-paying position. And even perhaps catch up to Sasha. You never know. Slinky is still not having the best pace, so I think there is at least a small chance that Mendes might drive into this range, depending on how much he can push. I think at the top, Schumacher just still controlling this. Max Power, though, setting the fastest lap again, so taking it right away from GZ Mendes. And he is showing a very promising turn of pace there in 2nd place. Also a lot of ERS, but I think the same thing can be said for almost the whole top 3. Daddlepad struggling the most for ERS, but I think he's still pretty much fine. He's going to recover it. Mendes sets the fastest lap again, so forget what I said. He is actually on a roll at the moment, is the GTZ driver. Can he really catch up to these guys? In fact, we missed one Elliott getting a time penalty as well, meaning Slinky could be fairly safe from an attack, depending on just how much pace he can hold on to. Sasha going wide there as well. If he hasn't lifted, I would say that would have been a track limit warning too. As Krishy picks up another penalty, 14th though for him. There's not much to play for. 16 seconds down on the rest. Grosjean is actually trying to make a move here into turn 1. Can he make this work? He's going deep, but he's making it work. What a move. I think there's actually some wing damage involved. Yeah, for Krishy. See that end plate missing. Let's have a look now. Will he come back to the outside of turn 3? But I'd imagine the grip is just not there for him, as that is Grosjean slightly deep, but it gets it slowed down very nicely. And Grosjean is through into 14th position. A position fight there to cover right at the back. But now 6 laps yet to go in this session. Schumacher still leads. But can he hold on to it? I think he's looked pretty assured of that lead, but not without pressure. Daddlepad, fastest lap of the race. So he is still having a word in this top 3 fight. No penalties going on there for 3, and in fact top 4 as well, because Slinky is looking relatively short of himself that he can keep this without a penalty and rock it home in P4, which would be very impressive with the pace that unfortunately for himself he hasn't had. But it's still a fairly strong turnover. Oh, Mendes gets a penalty. That is a shame for him. That is a big, big shame. He's had such a good recovery there. Would still finish P8 as it stands, but probably eliminates his chance of finishing any higher on time penalties for the moment. That's a shame to see. I think he can still be pretty proud of what he's done in this race so far. One Elliott. Can he find any way through on Slinky? I think if he wants to get past and drive out a 3-second gap, he's going to have to do it very, very soon. Or otherwise, an overtake wouldn't even make any sense in the sense of track position, because You might have the track position after all. Sasha picks up another 3-second penalty. That will cost him now. Pokeral will be through, and Mendes does still have a small chance to get a to get an extra point or so. Dennis going round the outside of Mustache. What a move that is. That is brilliant stuff from Dennis. Moves himself up to P9 on the circuit. Will now have to drive out the gap, but I think he's got the gap in front. Rodas is actually on the softs because it has almost stopped raining. Is there anything that can still happen in this Grand Prix? I think the only thing that can't happen is probably a safety car, due to it being lap 25. The latest possible point would be the next lap. But Rodas on the softs, he's trying this out. Very adventurous, but I think it's just a little bit too early, and I think we might just be finishing this on the intermediates, even though the rain has actually stopped. It has stopped raining, meaning that the DRS might be enabled at some point towards the final few laps, which could just see some drivers like Dadopad or One Elliott, of course the main protagonist in this. One Elliott might just be quite happy with this, but at the same time perhaps even Slinky, because the Slinky setup choice being maybe not ideal for these conditions. Maybe it's going to be better for dries, you never know. Krishy making the move there on Grosjean. Grosjean actually into the pit lane, which I would imagine is also for a set of softs right for the end of this Grand Prix. I just think it's a tad bit too early, and actually too late at the same time. As a Sector 3, it's the yellow flag. Is that Mendes? Is that Mendes, or no, it's his teammate. It's Rodas, who's had a spin. Grosjean, though, has had a spin as well, right out of the pit lane. That's not what you want to see. And yeah, I think just for these top drivers, it's simply too late for a pit stop to make any kind of difference. Schumacher will still keep leading this race. I think Max Power is now pushing a little bit. He's trying to put that guy under pressure up front. He's been in front of him all this race long. And is there anything that he can make work? VRT Robin in chat. Truck drives up in like 2 laps. Would it still warrant a pit stop with the performance of intermediates on this game? We know it's just stupidly strong, if I may say so myself. Even in dry conditions, the Inters are realistically, they're just too good. And therefore, I think the top guys will not pit. I think nobody really will pit throughout this field towards the end of this race. But Max Power, look at the pressure he's putting on the Schumacher. Yeah, this is certainly not over yet. And if the DRS gets activated, there is still a chance for somebody who's not Schumacher to win this Grand Prix. There is a spin again. That is Rodas. It's just not been the race for Rodas. His teammate, at least, has been carrying the flag super well. Casanova picks up a first penalty of this Grand Prix, which is a shame for himself, but I don't think it cost him anything down in 12th position. It just stays without points, unfortunately, will the VRA drivers. But this top 3 fight throughout this entire race has been so tense, and it comes down to the final 3 laps, and hopefully does not come down to Ace Grosjean in front, being a lapped car very soon. But I think it actually could, depending on how the track dries out. It's the yellow flag in the final sector. Grosjean gets out of the way, thankfully, so good job on him there, good fair play stuff, but that's what you have to do under these blue flag. So very good stuff from him, makes that one work very nicely. But who of the 3 up top has the most pace? Is it Max Power? Look at how close he is to the gearbox of that AlphaTauri. This is not over yet. Look at him go now. Final 3 laps of this race. He is sensing an opportunity to perhaps even take the win away from WOR and bringing it home for VRT. Who would have thought at the start of this race that we would see this situation with just 2 and a bit laps to go? And I think the same can be said for One Elliott, who's actually finally looking to have this avenue through. He's going to be on the inside for turn 9, which will turn to the outside for 10. But if he stays ahead at the very first point, Elliott looks like he is through. And he is indeed. Elliott makes the move work. Sasha, another penalty. That is not good news for Juventus at all. And I think, that is now the order for Slinky to let him through and perhaps just hold up the rest as much as possible. Elliott in 4th, Sasha in 5th, but massive penalties involved, unfortunately, for the Swiss driver in P5. And Slinky, I think, will have to do a big job now to keep any sort of spot here. Schumacher now starting the penultimate lap of the Australian Grand Prix, the opening round of CTC Division 2, Season 2, Division 2, apologies. And this is far from over. It looks like Max Power has slightly more pace in these conditions. Mendes sets another fastest lap. It looks like a little bit of a theme, really, that he can't go out and pump these laps out and maybe even steal a spot from Sasha if everything goes perfectly to plan. But I think his lead battle is really what we have to look out for. Rodas now retires in the pit lane, sees no further point in competing in this race. Shame to see, but down in 16th. I don't think you can really blame him. As now Max Power, 2.5 tenths. That gap is close. But Schumacher has got barely more ERS. Ooh, late on the brakes. And even for such a quick section, he saw that AlphaTauri backhand up close. I'm not sure if he would have wanted to see that. But it's certainly meaning that it will heat up in this final stage of the Grand Prix. Schumacher leading by over 0.3 of a second. This is so close. Nothing is decided here at all. Max Power is pushing to the maximum. You can see that. The rear end is stepping out all over the spot. But it's what you have to do sometimes in these situations. There could still be mistakes coming on this final lap. Super difficult conditions now on a drying track as Schumacher starts the final lap of this Australian Grand Prix. How will Daddlepad even have a word in this either? We will have a look now. Final lap, just the final 5.2 kilometers. Daddlepad gets a penalty. That'll be him probably out of the question for the race victory. One Elliott now sets the fastest lap, finally released from the trails of Slinky. And I think he might actually finish ahead of Slinky even on the time penalty front. Max Power, slight oversteer there. Bit slightly too early on the power, if you will. But yeah, that will cost him slightly on this run down into turn 9. And he's going to have to push everything out here. Now this all heating up at the back as well. But we have to keep an eye on the front. Schumacher, I think, might just have this in the bag. Every bit of ERS is now being used. And I think Schumacher has got the upper hand on his Austrian mate there behind him. As it's been a great fight. Oh, losing the back end in the middle of the corner. Holds on to it, thankfully, for his sake. And I think Schumacher might just have the job done here as he heads into the final sector for the last time in this race. Got an Alfa Romeo moving on the McLaren. That's a laps move there. Yes, it is. Schumacher into turn 13 and 14 for the last time. It will be victory for WOR. And what a race it has been. Mustache, in fact, gets through there on Dennis, right at the back of the field. Schumacher wins the Australian Grand Prix, sets the fastest lap as well. Max Power in P2. Daddlepad rounds out the podium for the GSP team. A great performance from him. One Elliott will finish this race in P4 after all the struggles initially. Sasha, P5 on the circuit. I think he'll be dropping down a lot. Slinky up to 5. Pokerel to 6. Mendes does make up the spots to go to P7 ahead of Sasha. What a strong showing from GZ Mendes. And behind all of that, Benelori Brent heading to the line. He will probably just about manage to defend from A's Mustache to finish in P9 and P10. Benelori Dennis, the first driver to miss out on points. Casanova actually jumping Dennis on time penalties for 11th. And VR8 Chupi will be the final driver to cross the line with Christian Grosjean already through. WR Schumacher 1 wins the Australian Grand Prix. And it was much, much more tense than you would have expected, maybe. From P3 up to P1, GTZ Mendes picks up driver of the day in accordance with the game, which, to be honest, I actually cannot disagree with, really. What a great performance it was from him to get some very, very solid points on the board for GTZ, as now the podium drivers will be heading out onto the 3 top steps. I mean, great race we have seen here in Australia, fully weather affected. And now just waiting for those 3 to come out, headed by an AlphaTauri, followed with a Red Bull of VRT, and rounded out with GSP on the podium. What a race it has been, and here he comes. Schumacher 1, esports challenger driver. Is underlined why he has this reputation and comes out onto the top step of the podium. What a victory it's been. What a race in Australia. And if this race is anything to go by, I can't wait for the next ones.
So here are the full race results one more time. Schumacher won, comes out on top, sets the fastest up as well after starting in third. Brilliant performance from him, picking up the maximum of points. Max Power for VRT finishes second. Dadopad in P3 for the GSP team. Juan Elliott finishes in P4 in the end. Slinky in P5 for Juventus Racing after starting on the front row. Pokerau in P6 for VRT. Mendes P7 for GTZ. Sasha finishes 8th for Juventus. And Benelori, Brent and Mustache round out the points for Benelori and Ace. Casanova, Dennis, Chupi, Krishy and Grosjean follow behind. And the two non-finishers were GTZ Rodas and one Robin W1. And that rounds out very nicely the first round of CTC Division 2. What a race it's been. Fully weather affected. Brilliant performances up and down the field. Very difficult for all the drivers, but I think they've all done a brilliant job. So I think on that front, I can say thank you for watching this CTC Division 2 stream, and there's certainly going to be more to come over on the YouTube channel. You can find this, of course, as well. Like, subscribe, comment on this video as well if you wish to do. Follow us on our socials as well, twitter.com/CT Championship, as well as twitch.tv/CT Championship. And you will not be missing out on any of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 action at all. So this has been it from my side. My name is Alex the G. The commentator for next week, we will see. It depends all on the Discord integration coming to PlayStation 5. But yeah, that's a story for another time. So therefore, I will say thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I have. And until next time, goodbye.